Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Hong Kong reported no new coronavirus cases today, keeping the total case count at 1,047. This also marks the 22nd straight day the city has not registered a local infection.
Yeah, and now authorities in Guangdong Province, Hong Kong, and Macau are reportedly considering exempting eligible residents from quarantine requirements. Kana Chu has details.
It's been more than 3 months since Hong Kong imposed travel restrictions on arrivals from the mainland. The measures include a 14-day compulsory home quarantine that's due to expire June 7th. In an interview with the state-owned newspaper Ta Kung Pao, Chief Executive Carrie Lam said the city is now in talks with Macau and Guangdong Province over plans to lift the quarantine requirement. Tentatively, the exemption will first apply to residents with specific reasons to travel, in addition to negative nucleic acid test results. Authorities hope to roll out the plan within a month.
To open up the border between Hong Kong and China, we have to wait till both sides are free of local transmission of infection for at least 28 days. For example, for Hong Kong, we have to wait till at least the 20th of May.
Despite the CE's reiterations on mainlanders' lack of contribution to the local case count, the respiratory disease expert also warned against flouting the advice for the substantial risks that entail.
In Hubei, Heilongjiang, and recently Jilin, they have actually new confirmed cases. So those 3 areas would be of high risk, and we should not allow visitors from those 3 areas to come to Hong Kong for the time being. In general, you need to have 2 incubation periods free of infection in order to call that city to be quite safe.
The city's leader also said the situation with cross-border students can only be dealt with when all control points resume normal operations. That's because the demographic concern is scattered in all parts of Shenzhen, and attending school will be difficult with Shenzhen Bayport being the sole usable passage. Kana Chu, TVB News.
Police have arrested around 230 people and fired pepper balls as anti-government protesters gathered at various locations yesterday.
Among those arrested was Democratic Party lawmaker Kwong, who was sent to hospital after suffering injuries during his arrest in Mong Kok. Here is Haley Zhou.
It could be a fatal action when you use your knee to press on the neck of a person. You can actually kill one person. If the police want to murder Kwong and all those being arrested, I think it is really, really outrageous.
This after Democratic Party lawmaker Kwong, who went to Mong Kok last night to mediate between the police and protesters, suffered injuries during his arrest and was sent to hospital. He was surrounded and subdued by a group of officers after he fell to the ground. The police accused him of throwing a water bottle towards the officers. He was arrested on suspicion of disorder in a public place. Kwong denied the accusation. All this as anti-government protests made a comeback in various districts yesterday in defiance of the ban on public gatherings of more than 8 people. The demonstrations continued into the night in Mong Kok, with some protesters trying to block roads and set fire to garbage bags near Nelson Street. At around 9:30 p.m., police sent reinforcement to the area to disperse the crowd on Shantong Street. The police fired pepper spray at least twice at reporters and projectiles that contained irritants. A number of demonstrators were subdued and taken away. At one point, officers pointed their rifles upwards after some objects fell from above. The police says some 230 people were arrested for various offenses, including unlawful assembly, possessing offensive weapons, and obstructing police officers. One man was apprehended for carrying materials that can be used to make petrol bombs. Some 18 people were sent to hospitals. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Two student journalists aged 12 and 16 were taken away by police during yesterday's protest. And that's sparking controversy over whether youngsters should be covering such events. Kwong reports.
This 12-year-old boy was at a Chimsacho mall yesterday before police took him away. He, along with a 16-year-old girl, were reportedly working for a student-run news organization, Student Deaf Media. The group issued a statement on social media noting the pair were not charged and were released in the presence of district councillors and their parents. It also said police warned the two that they will be taken away from future protest areas even if they are performing reporting duties. Their parents may also be subject to the charge neglect by those in charge of a child or young person. This has many wondering if young journalists should be covering news events.
Youngsters with age under 18, they are not mature enough to face this kind of a situation, like a demonstration or some rioting scene. Even with the guidance of an adult, it's not good enough. I guess they should be banned from those kind of situations. The government should set up some kind of guidelines, more rigid guidelines for this kind of organization to be set up, at least close to what the existing traditional media is doing for newspaper or for radio, television.
Under existing law, there's no law, to ban, people doing reporting there, unless they breach other laws. Otherwise, what we want most from the student journalists or other journalists, is that they are all abide by basic journalistic principles, that they are doing reporting there, nothing else, not non-reporting activities. They are reporters, not participants or protesters.
Currently, Hong Kong does not have an official organization responsible for issuing press identification. The government previously said they have no intention of establishing a regulatory body for such purposes in respect to the city's press freedom. Kwong, TVB News.
The government will announce plans to regulate the liberal studies curriculum for secondary school students later this year. In an interview with the state-owned news power Tao Pao, Chief Executive Carrie Lam says some people have been poisoning school children in the city with false and biased information, and she expressed her concern about liberal studies. Since the social unrest last year, some politicians have blamed the subject for radicalizing students. The Chinese mainland reported 17 new cases of COVID-19, including 5 in Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, where a strict lockdown was lifted last month. This comes as Shanghai Disneyland reopened to the public for the first time since January 25th. The theme park is limiting the visitor numbers and requiring face masks, temperature checks, and social distancing. The $5.5 billion China flagship is the first of Disney's 6 resorts around the world to reopen. Disney's latest quarterly profit fell 91%. The new infections sound a note of caution amid the efforts on the mainland to ease coronavirus restrictions.
Officials in South Korea reported 35 new coronavirus cases as of midnight on Sunday, the second day in a row of new cases of that magnitude. The resurgence in numbers has raised concerns that the country could enter a second wave of outbreaks. Alan Bucknia reports.
South Korea had been lauded for its quick action on the pandemic, significantly reducing the rate of new infections in recent weeks. Most of the new cases are linked to a number of Seoul nightclubs and bars that cater to members of the lesbian and gay community. Authorities have tested 4,000 people who had patronized the night spots and are still trying to track down 3,000 more. It's raised complications for officials desperately trying to track down those who might be infected in a nation where open homosexuality is often taboo, and people still face discrimination, including job loss. In Japan, the government said it will take additional relief measures to swiftly combat the fallout from the coronavirus epidemic. The additional steps would aid firms struggling to pay rent, support for students who have lost part-time jobs, and more subsidies to companies hit by slumping sales. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe wouldn't reveal the size of the second supplementary budget. He said it will depend on how many prefectures will be able to lift state of emergency measures now being applied nationwide. Alan Bookniat, TVB News.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence is not in quarantine and plans to go to work today. The official statement follows reports that Pence was self-isolating over the weekend.
One of Pence's staff has tested positive for COVID-19, sparking concerns about the spread of the coronavirus within the White House. Mike Pence will be at work on Monday. The White House says the vice president has tested negative, is not in quarantine, and continues to follow the advice of the White House medical unit. 3 senior officials guiding the U.S. response to the coronavirus pandemic remain in self-quarantine after coming into contact with someone who had tested positive. Both Pence and President Donald Trump have drawn criticism for not wearing face coverings, despite a recommendation from experts to do so in certain public settings. In New York State, new rules dictating procedures for senior care facilities, including enhanced staff testing.
If a nursing home operator does not follow these procedures, they will lose their license. Well, that's harsh. No, harsh is having a nursing home resident who doesn't get the appropriate care. That's what's harsh.
The new measures come as criticism grows over the handling of nursing facility outbreaks and slow reporting of the number of deaths in individual homes. About 1/5 of the nation's coronavirus deaths in nursing homes and long-term care facilities have been in New York. Meanwhile, New York State is investigating 85 cases of children with an inflammatory disease linked to COVID-19. Officials are also alerting other states about the mysterious symptoms.
We have a whole team investigating all these charts, and we're going to find and get to the bottom of it, come up with what are the criteria, and provide that to the rest of the states.
3 children in the state have died from the rare syndrome, a development that may signal a pandemic risk for children. Across the U.S., nearly 80,000 Americans have died from COVID-19, and at least 1.3 million Americans have been infected. Welcome back to TVB News. The Commerce Chief is proposing an emergency aid package to save Ocean Park from going bust.
It would replace a funding plan tabled in LegCo this year to give the park a facelift. Jackie Lynn reports.
The city's homegrown attraction, Ocean Park, could close for good by the end of June. That's if it fails to secure the $5 billion bailout fund to be scrutinized in LegCo this Friday.
This is a plan to save Ocean Park from going bust, from being liquidated, and keep the park running while we are sorting out the future.
In recent years, Ocean Park has been floundering to keep its head above water. Since the fiscal year 2015 to 2016, it has recorded losses of more than $200 million. Last year, the deficit more than doubled to $557 million. With the city's virus-battered tourism sector expected to remain in turmoil, would the rescue plan simply be delaying the inevitable day of financial reckoning for the cash-strapped theme park?
We are trying to catch up with the new circumstances, because if we are unable to formulate a plan, they will continue to be suffer from the pressure of reduced tourism, reduced visitors, but at the same time, difficulties in maintaining the park opening.
While expressing reluctance for layoffs and another round of no-pay leave, the park's senior management says it will mull all options available to help the park stay afloat. While there isn't a timetable for the theme park's reopening, the Commerce Chief said it's the administration's wish to have it back in operation as soon as possible when the coronavirus is kept in check in the city. Jackie Lynn, TVB News.
The government has a free immunization program at maternal and child health centers across town to protect children from various infectious diseases. But since the start of the coronavirus outbreak earlier this year, there has been a significant drop in the number of vaccine doses given to young children. Dong Yao-nie talked to a parent who worried about taking her child to the health centers amid the epidemic.
Vaccines protect against a number of infectious diseases. But in the time of COVID-19, some parents worry about taking their children to health centers to get vaccinated. They're afraid that by going outside, they run the risk of exposing their kids to the virus. This mother is in such a dilemma.
Yeah, actually I'm really scared about it. The thing is what, she's not even put a mask on her face. She's pull it out and throw it away. That's why I'm very scared. The infections may spread even to babies also. No.
Although she still took her daughter to get vaccinated as scheduled, many parents are not following the guidelines. Health authorities have seen a drop in the number of vaccine doses given to children under the age of 5 at maternal and child health centers since the start of the coronavirus outbreak. In the first 4 months of the year, a 17% year-on-year drop was recorded, a fall of some 28,000 doses citywide. This means many kids might have missed the best vaccination time to give them protection against such diseases as hepatitis B and measles.
We are really have some worry about that, so we really want to encourage those parents that must bring the children back for the vaccination.
Health officers say children missing out on vaccines will face higher infection risks. Luckily, it is never too late to act.
The parents should be make the appointment with them as soon as possible. Actually, they can have the several types of vaccination have it injected at the same time.
Masks are required for children at the centers, but the Department of Health warns kids under the age of 2 should not wear them due to the risk of suffocating. Parents can protect their young by using face shields or covering the baby proms with cloth or blankets instead. Dong Yao-nie, TVB News.
Pro-democracy lawmaker Ray Chan filed a police report this afternoon accusing a fellow legislator of assaulting him. Last Friday, during the LegCo House Committee meeting, lawmakers clashed over who should preside over the meeting. Pro-established lawmaker Kwong allegedly pushed and dragged Chan on the floor. Chan was told after an X-ray scan that he suffered from a herniated disc. He is still waiting for his MRI scan. Chan also plans to initiate a private prosecution and will try to raise $1 million through crowdfunding for this purpose. Kwok wouldn't comment on Chan's move.
That is our time for the news. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.